I give Mr. Ludwig one job, and he forgets to hit the button. All right, Lenny Leeper is here, and your name is?
Mike Cunning.
All right, Mike and Lenny, so let's talk about, I don't know, some of the greatest that you have ever seen play the game. Go ahead.
Well, I've been actually fortunate enough, a lot of the names that were mentioned before, I actually officiated their games. Honestly, the best high school athlete I ever saw actually competed against is Dwight Collins.
Oh.
He was
Great.
just so gifted, so natural. People look at him in football, but he was every bit as good and Steve can verify this, basketball player. He was a great baseball player and chose not to play baseball. He ran track. But I know, in my opinion, he was the best I ever competed against. And even through officiating, I just think he was the best natural athlete I ever saw.
Listen, and I tell Steve this all the time, and no doubt, Dwight's one of my all-time favorites, University of Pittsburgh, cup of coffee with Minnesota. I think they should have given him a little bit more time. I think he could have had a very solid pro career, too. But Jerry Moy, Derek's dad, sadly no longer with us, dear friend of mine, he really made a lot of Dwight Collins possible. Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement. Jerry was a beast. I literally think he could have ran through a wall. Just a big, strong kid. He led the way for Dwight a lot of times. And, because Dwight was so good, people did forget about Jerry. But you mentioned Essex Law with the last two.
Great.
I actually had one of his games at Rochester. He had 234 yards in the first half and did not play the second half.
Man. All right, some of the great ones. Go ahead.
Ooh.
A lot of them.
A lot of them they've already been mentioned, but
You can mention the same ones. That's fine.
one that stands out to me a lot is Sean Gilbert.
Oh, man.
And the first, was doing the game out of Equipa, side judge, so my job was to bring the captains out. All right? So I'm standing there, and Sean Gilbert's on this side. And I'm looking up, and I'm like, Jesus, he's only, whatever. We walk out in the field, and did toss and all that stuff, go back, game starts. He intercepts a ball, runs it, I swear to God it was 200 yards, but he went touchdown.
No kidding.
And to this day, I can still see him running down the field with that football.
Wow.
And
How do you keep up with these players?
well, I had to slow down to let him get ahead of me.
He knew I was going to ask him that question. That's one of them little soft tosses right there. That was pretty good.
I slowed. I didn't want to, make him look bad. So I
Right,
slowed
right.
down. The thing is,
God, I love what you guys do.
you let him go, and you just watch him. And you're watching, like your vision is like this.
I got to tell you a quick story. Jim Render, name dropper, I am. He has been here, winningest coach in the history of Whipple, probably one of my best friends on the planet. We were driving, coming back from somewhere, someplace, many, many years ago, and we're down in Quaker Valley on 65. And it was a Thursday, and soccer was, and we're at a red light, and Jim says, "You see that over there?" I said, "What?" He said, "Over there." I said, "Yeah, Quaker Valley." He said, "No. You see what they're doing on that field?" I said, "Soccer." He said, "Someday you're going to see that's going to become larger than life." This was decades ago. Think about all the great sports that back in the day, kids played every sport, but now you've got youngsters specializing in field hockey, lacrosse, soccer. There's a plethora of stuff out there right now, Lenny. So officiating has never been more important, I think.
Well, it is because our numbers are down so much. I think Bobby Joe touched on it earlier. I know I'm still involved with basketball. When I started, this is my 41st year now. Wow. We had 125 officials in our chapter. We're down to 52. So we've lost, close to 2/3 of our chapter. And, what I tell people all the time is, that the kids stay 16, 17, 18 years old. We get older. The kids are always the same age.
But here's the thing that I'm so glad you kind of maybe go back full circle here, because I really wanted to ask everybody this, but I definitely want to ask you guys. And I was talking about Ludwig being in such good shape, and he is. You guys are all in really good shape. How important do you think that is? We've had the argument with other officials and some umpire questions as far as the major leagues. I think that's changing. But I think conditioning now more than ever for what you do, it's a must.
Well, it's like in any profession, your first impression's everything. If I walk out on a basketball court and my stomach's hanging over my belt, that's strike one.
That's it.
and that gives them something to pick on. And then I can't run and I can't keep up. So there's a second thing. So, I'm not going to start with a negative. I want to stay in shape. Pride does that to you. You don't want to go out there and do something half-ass. You want to do it right, and our job is to be in shape, to know the rules, and to do the best we can out there. And, like I said, I'm not going to give them something extra to pick on me about. I'm going to stay in shape. And when I decide I don't want to do that, then I'll get out.
What do you think about that, being in shape? Because obviously you're in
I
shape.
can remember when I first started, Tom Hanner was my referee. And Ted Small and the guys on the crew, they teach, they tell you. But I remember Tom coming to me one time and he said, look, you're going to be the back judge. You might not have a lot to do the whole game, but fourth quarter,
You better be ready.
There's going to be a play, and it's going to be in the end zone. And he says, your mechanics, in other words, where you're supposed to be at a certain time on the field, he said, your mechanics is going to save you. And I said, he says, you have to be there to make the call. You can't be 5 yards back this way and the call's in the back of the end zone. You have to be at the back of the end zone to make the call. And I never forgot that. And that's why I'd go up to the track and I said, I got to start running around the track a little bit so I can make sure.
That you can get there.
Because as Lenny said, the kids are young all the time.
Right.
We're getting older all the time, and they can go past you in a minute. So that's where I worried about the conditioning more than anything is, to make sure I was where I was supposed to be.
Listen, my best friend on the planet, and I've got a few, but best, diehard, basically a brother from another mother, Mark Nemisak, who did this forever.
Yeah.
Love Nemi, but he has such a competitive spirit. And I'm going to take this to my grave, and I'll challenge anyone. The great Joe Hamilton told me to my face, and I've known Joe forever, he was the greatest high school football player he ever coached. Nemi was a quarterback, as we call him. Ricky Groves became the starting quarterback, and Stevie was just talking about them and how they scrimmaged them back in the day, and they actually beat up on a pretty good Beaver Falls team, which I find amazing. But there was a lot of talent on that team. Nemi became a tailback, but defensively, he was a tremendous safety, okay? But he would tell me after these Friday night of officiating, he said, I just love being out there. And he said, every once in a while, I like to run right alongside the fastest guy on the team. So you guys have this competitive fire in your belly, but I think that's what makes the sport even better, because you want to be the best you can be.
Absolutely. Again, you don't want to, when I got into this, I told myself I'd never embarrass my family, myself, or the game. And if it comes to the point where I can't get off the couch and I don't enjoy it, then I'll stay home.
Let me tell you one other thing that I noticed. Basketball was always my favorite, and I loved, as I mentioned earlier, being courtside. And I was around some great coaches. Nick Alloy, for many years in East Liverpool, grew up in Midland, played at Bowling Green. Bobby Dawson, who grew up in Eastern Ohio, East Liverpool, played at Bowling Green. And they used to work these officials. I mean, Bobby Dawson, his chair would slide down. He'd be standing up, pounding, kicking, and just irritating these guys. I'm a pretty calm individual, but praise God that none of you have ever been arrested for assault and battery. How in the world do you put up with these coaches when they're in your grill? I mean, I've seen it in Major League Baseball. I remember Earl Weaver, what he would do. How do you maintain your cool? Do you count to 10? How do you just have that button to turn it off, Lenny?
Well, first of all, the assault and battery has come to mind on several occasions. But no, it's part of our training.
You actually get training on that?
Well, we talk about it at meetings. We discuss our demeanor, how we're supposed to handle ourselves. We have to be the calm ones in the situation. And I do basketball, and that's probably the worst. I mean, I've had some coaches address my family tree and everything else. I'll bite your lip. You got to remain calm. I mean, there's penalties. We give technical fouls. It gets too bad, we throw them out, and we don't want to do that. They coach. They put a lot of time in, those kids. They deserve to coach, so we want to keep them out there. But there's times when, in any sport, you have to eject them. I can name some coaches over the years I've given a lot of tease to, and they still haven't learned. But you just have to remain calm. And if you're not, then you probably shouldn't be officiating.
All right, how about you? How do you just keep it buttoned up?
Well, first thing you have to remember is if you're going to do something, take your stripes off. then do something. Now,
Or
again,
wait in an alley.
yeah, but I'll go back to what, again, Tom Hanner, when, he's always guys you work with always talking to tell you things. And Tom told me, especially when I moved to line judge, where you're pretty much with the coach or coaches the whole time, up and down the field. And he told me, if a coach asks you a question, give him an answer. If you don't know, say, Coach, I don't know, I'll find out for you, etc. He said, but if the coach is being mouthy or belligerent or something, he says, turn your back to him and walk away. He said, because if you stand there, nothing good is going to happen. So he says, that's all you do. Give him an explanation, best you can, and if that doesn't satisfy him, he said, just turn around and walk away from him.
All right, talk about this association, then we'll let you go. And Stevie and I are going to do one more before I get out of here tonight. But just your association, 100 years and being a part of this. Go ahead.
It's a lot of pride. A lot of great officials before me. I spent, my whole career in Beaver County. I'm proud of that. I worked 15 years in college for Gene Steratore. There's a lot of work that went into it, a lot of pride. Hundreds and hundreds of officials have come down the pike, and this generation's keeping it going. It's not easy. They put a lot of time in, study materials, watch films, go to meetings. It's not like basketball. They're out on a Friday night in 30-degree weather getting snowed on, and I'm in the gym staying warm now. I've got out of football 10 years ago. I do the assigning for the max goals, and I've been there, so I know what they go through. I respect what they do. I'll never see another 100 years, but I hope they last another 100.
Nothing quite like it. How about you? Go ahead.
Yeah, same thing. When I started to officiate, my brother-in-law talked to me about it. He said, you want to be an official? I said, yeah. Well, I played high school football. I said, yeah, I like football. So that's how I got started. And then the guys you meet in the chapter and then the guys you work with. One thing I really liked about high school was once you're on a crew, you're with that same crew through the years, so to speak. You're working with the same guys. You get to know each other, you know their families, and it's just a good time. And I know the pay was nice and it was helpful, but after the game, we go get a sandwich and a beer or two, and most of what you made, you already spent.
I know.
But
Recycled.
Meeting people and having good guys that you officiate with, like when you do junior high games, JV, whatever it might be, you work with different officials, but you have a good time. That's one story I have. I was doing a junior high game at Center. I'll never forget it. And it was on the grass field. It was a beautiful day, and you could smell the grass. And it was just a beautiful day. And one kid was standing there from Hopewell, and I said, "Isn't this great? Being out here, playing football, having fun. It's just a great time. It's a great place to." He says, "Oh, I don't know." He says, "I want to go home." I said, "Why? What's the matter?" He said, "Mom's making cheeseburgers today."
You better watch. They'll take your cheeseburger away from you.
And I said, "I understand."
I do too, and that's all good.
But like you said, walking out on that field sometime, now it's different.
I just want to know where you got that Pitt hat at. I like that hat. That is the Pitt Panthers.
My son got me this.
That's a sweet hat. Can you imagine if I in my lifetime could see one more Danny Marino? One more Joe Namath. I talk to people all the time, and I know I'm starting to sound like the old curmudgeon telling people to get off his lawn. But you guys have had to be in that situation where you see a freshman and you're like, uh-oh, there's some skill there. And then they eventually play on Sundays, like a Jordan you were talking about, or Durrell. All these players, that must kind of give you a sense of satisfaction that you witnessed that, right?
Yeah, some of the kids you mentioned, Baldwin, Rivas, Ty Law, those kids from Aliquippa, you'd see them in junior high, and you just knew you were going to see them on Sundays.
You did, really?
They were men playing amongst boys.
Wow.
They were just so gifted. And a great story about Darrell Rivas. On a Saturday, he played in a state championship game in football. He scored 5 touchdowns, 5 different ways. Okay? That Tuesday, with 1 day of practice, he put 34 points up on Beaver Falls. in basketball.
That's pretty amazing. And, you know, let's not forget these great coaches. And what I love about what they do here, and Stevie's going to drop by for just a moment, and he was a great football player. But we had Donnie Unesson here and Frank Morocco, some of my old-time friends, and I knew them as coaches, right? Well, we're sitting here, and I'm talking to Don Unesson, who I've known forever, and he said, we're talking about Poe. And he said, yeah, New Mexico State. He goes, well, I had a little bit to do with that. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, I went to New Mexico State. And he lined up against Merlin Olsen. I mean, listen, this is like Little House on the Prairie stuff. I mean, Merlin Olsen. And then Frank Morocco is talking about his son, Roman. And I'm sitting there going, oh, that's a cool name. And when I was a kid, you know, the posters that you had, nobody really had any much Steelers stuff because there wasn't any great Steelers back in the day. But there were people like Dick Butkus, and they were on the wall. But so was that quarterback from Hollywood, Roman Gabriel. I find out that's why his son is named Roman. He played with him in North Carolina. And speaking of North Carolina, what's happening to the great Bill Belichick is ripping my heart out right now. Ripping my heart out right now. I hope they find a way to figure that out because he's still, in my opinion, the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work. This is why I get up every day and I work for free, although I might get some pizza before I get out of here. All right, one more, Steve Higgins. We'll come back. This is a great association. These officials, Beaver Valley, help them celebrate their 100th anniversary. Whatever they ask you to do, step up. And remember, when the game is on, that's somebody's brother, that's somebody's husband, that's somebody's wife, that's somebody's child. So be respectful. We'll come back a little bit more in just a moment. Stay with us.